Hi, this is Tom Rhodes. Please join me as I scour the four corners of the earth to bring you interesting and intelligent, funny people who will enrich your life with wisdom and laughter. I'll take you to Europe, Australia, all over America. I might take you to the peaks of Machu Picchu, the canals of Amsterdam, the Great Wall of China, or the swamps of Florida, and certainly the many, many comedy clubs and comedy theaters all over the world. Come hang out with me and meet the many interesting people that pop up in my life as I travel the world as a stand-up comedian.
You're listening to Tom Rhodes Radio.
Karate kick, baby.
Rock and roll.
Well, you've matured a lot since we've known each other. But Marc Maron, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Number one, I guess I should thank you for popularizing the medium of podcasting. You're the guy that put this whole...
I did. It was nothing I planned. It was not intentional. I'm proud of it, but it all happened for all of us sort of simultaneously. The success of whatever I did sort of grew alongside of the popularity of podcasts, and I guess I had something to do with popularizing them.
Every comedian has a podcast now.
Yeah, well, I can't be blamed for that.
But I mean, it's a new creative outlet that people have. That some guy in Keokuk, Iowa, can do some show and be creative. And,
sure.
You're not dependent on any industry people to give you the green light to do something.
Sure, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, it seems like that's the way people do it now. That there's a never-ending appetite for content on all the platforms.
I want to know what's happening in Keokuk, Iowa.
Do you?
No. So now it's been almost exactly 1 year since
you gig there.
When I started out on the road. Yeah.
What was that? One of those John Fox diversion gigs?
No.
Oh, that was Idaho. Warsaw, Idaho. Remember, you had to go up there. You got to do giggles, but you had to do the fucking island. And then the Wednesday was like in not Warsaw, in Idaho, in where you drove like 5 or 6 hours to where that college is, and then drove back to Seattle. I did it with Kameen. It was a John Fox gig that was attached to the Giggles weekend. There was an island gig.
Yeah, and so how did your neurotic Jewish persona go down in Idaho?
Went okay. By that point, I certainly came up learning how to sell who I was to Boston townies. So I knew how to do it. So it was okay. It was in a disco. So it was on, the mic was in the middle of a dance floor, and I don't know who was there. I mean, none of those things, maybe it's PTSD, but I don't really remember necessarily who I was or how things went, but I didn't tank that. I wasn't like one of those guys that would go out and eat it. I mean, I was closing, so it went okay. I don't remember what the act was, but I could do it.
Well, I mean, you used to be, I never did that gig. But I certainly have done, I started out doing the standing in the middle of a dance floor of a, Holiday Inn lounge disco.
That was all the gigs I started doing in Boston. That was all of them. It was all one-nighters, 2-man shows, opener and a headliner, half hour and 45. That's how I started working, was doing one-nighters in New England, anywhere from a hotel to a bowling alley to a bar. But I was opening for dudes who would do 45. I'd do a half hour, go up cold. That's how I avoided that fucking host spot by doing that. Because my first year or two of working professionally was doing that. So when I finally got into a world like San Francisco, when I moved there, or down in New York, which didn't pan out that well, I was already a pretty strong middle just from doing that.
Right. Well, that was kind of my story, too. I started out on the southern circuits and playing the shittiest gigs.
Right.
And when I moved to San Francisco, it was like such a luxury to play in front of intelligent audiences that you didn't have to, corral like a lion tamer under the big time.
Like holding attention.
Yeah, and it's almost, how can you not start out on those shitty gigs not drinking and doing drugs. It's almost like a stripper, trying to numb herself to go out and,
I was so fucking. I guess I don't remember being fucked up. Like I remember, like when I was doing those gigs, because we had to drive, man. I mean, we were driving like anywhere from an hour to 4 hours and shit. So, like later on, I started getting pretty hammered after, but I didn't go up fucked up too much. Not too much, because it was so. Like you had to land that first 5 minutes. You had to be in it. I mean, you had to, you're going up cold to fucking locals at their dumb bar, and like you had to do it. I mean, you had to fucking do it in that first minute, or you're doomed. So it was a vigilance necessary to fucking just me and a younger, more neurotic, more angry me, more frightened guy to manage that. Like I certainly couldn't be fucked up.
Yeah. Well, like when you and I met in San Francisco years ago, you were quite the partier.
That was like later. That was
you
like
were sweaty, nervous, drug addict, and you were very angry.
I was angry, and I think like in San Francisco, like the time that I definitely drank. I'm trying to remember what was going on because I did get sober there. Like I was sober there for a while. I'd gone in and out of sobriety. And there was a period there where I was sober, but then I started doing shit again. And I remember because I had my first beer after like over a year with Jack Bulwer at that place down on Lower Haight. What was that name of that bar? Like the coach, it was like it had an Irish name or something.
Yeah, I remember that place. I used to see World Cup matches there.
Right.
I can't remember.
Yeah. So then I got back into it kind of hard, but I was with Kim and like it was definitely in and out. But I was angry, but I was less angry there than I was in New York. I think I sort of was able to. I got better there.
I mean that's where it all came together for me too, as a comedian, for all of us. Pat, I have it somewhere. I've mentioned it before many times. The Guardian came out with this like '93.
Yeah.
Came out with this. It was the cover story of the Guardian in San Francisco that stand up was done.
Yeah,
it was over.
Yeah,
and the cover was "Take my shtick, please," with like some old, suit and tie, hacky looking comedian. And at that time, it's me, you, Greg Proops, Margaret Cho, Patton Oswalt.
I got there. Me and Blaine and Patton got there within weeks of each other. And when we got there, so that was probably 92, because I did the competition. The first year I got there, I came in like 13th, I think. Was that right? And because I ran away from New York, and I'd relapsed. So I ran, and I'd broken up with Kim, and I went back, and I showed up at her house in Potrero Hill, where she was staying. I just begged her to take me back, and she took me back. And I remember we all met, me and Patton and Blaine, because we all got there at the same time, which by coincidence. And it felt pretty dead. And you were already there.
Yeah, I moved there like 1990.
Yeah. And Proops was there. Cho was like doing Josie's and sort of moving up. I don't remember her hanging around the clubs much. Like she seemed to be becoming what she became around then, right? 92.
Yeah, but she was doing the Punchline, and
I remember
I did the Punchline in Walnut Creek with her.
Yeah,
and I remember riding over there with her.
I was a middle for a little while there, and then like they started headlining me, pretty quick. Wills did, because I don't remember middling for too many people. I remember middling at Cobb's for Colin Quinn once, but I don't remember really featuring that long there.
But the thing that I was going to say was, so you and I have that story.
Yeah.
Where you came over to my apartment.
Yeah.
And you were on like some trucker crank.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, you got to talk to me, man.
Yeah.
And I went out and sat with you in the park for like, a couple of hours.
Yeah.
To calm you down.
Yeah.
And then you kept trying to get me to do this nasty trucker crank.
Yeah.
Like, which, I don't know, you sniffed it. It was like mashed up chemicals, maybe,
Yellow.
2 flakes of
It wasn't Coke? I feel like it was
like some synthetic,
it was?
It was like an imitation cocaine. There might have been some cocaine in it.
I thought it was that
but-
yellow fucking Mexican Coke.
Yeah, it was like that. I call it trucker crank because it wasn't pure coke.
Crank is crank, yeah.
And
yeah. I'm trying to remember where the hell I got it right.
So and you're like all sweaty and nervous, and then you finally break me down at the end of the night. You're like, do some of this. And so I do it, and then you go, and then like the blast of narcotics against my membrane and shooting up into my skull.
Yeah.
And now I'm all sweaty and nervous, and you go, okay, I gotta go, man.
Yeah.
And you left me, right?
Yeah.
So you were the last guy in the world that I thought would get clean.
Yeah.
And then you've been a really great inspiration in the fact that you've stayed clean all of these years. And so, I just had my, busted my head open in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Blacked out.
Sounded bad.
It was really bad. Had to go to emergency room.
Yeah.
Got a nice scar on the forehead.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I've just joined the human race a couple years ago,
Yeah, it's a haze,
But you've been a great inspiration that, you stayed clean, you've done your best work.
Mm-hmm. I think that's true. I think it is. It's been like...
But it's funny to look back at that, snapshot moment.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have been the guy that I thought would have cleaned up.
Well, I think, there were certainly worse drug addicts than me that we knew, and there were certain people in more trouble, but psychologically, I was sort of a mess. I don't, maybe I'm wrong because I don't know how people see me, but I was definitely, kind of tightly wrapped and angry and neurotic and not very confident, and the drugs didn't help anything. But I feel like there were definitely worse off people drug-wise, but I didn't seem destined to succeed.
Well, you were always a great comedian.
Yeah.
Even when you were having personal problems.
Well, that was probably the better of it. But there was it took a long time, man, to get that sobriety together. It's sort of astounding to me, that in August, I'll have 17 years clean and sober. That's baffling because I got sober in 99, wow. And one of the last dudes I did drugs with was Hedberg and Stebbins. Those two, and Stebbins got sober. So did Mitch the hard way. Mitch has been sober for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's when I was riding off the rails on the crazy train.
Yeah.
98, 99, and I was living in New York, and Hedberg was like my best friend.
I remember when you were there. You came to my house once.
Well, I was gonna. That's where I was gonna go with this in a second. So, and Hedberg was living at the Chelsea Hotel, and I was living in Wall Street.
Yeah.
I had this rock star apartment.
Yeah.
And we were doing tons of coke. And I remember when he first started dabbling with heroin, because I told him I would never do heroin because I was afraid of needles.
Yeah.
And he comes to me, he's all excited. I got a surprise for you. And we go back to the Chelsea Hotel, and he was like a little kid, man, bringing out like a new toy or something. He goes, I got us some heroin, but it's powder. We're going to sniff it.
You don't think he was doing it before that?
I think he was a little. But no, but I was one of his best friends. And this is before he got with Lynn.
Definitely something you hide.
Well, we talked openly about it. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. And he talked to me about doing it with him. So I think...
What year was that?
98, 99.
I think he was doing it before that.
Yeah?
I do. Yeah. Because I work with him. He was there when I went and got the fucking ring to get married the first time. I was, we were co-headlining, or maybe I was headlining in Scottsdale. And that's where my wife's family was from. And I went over to the jeweler. I was staying at that condo with Mitch, Danny Murr, because I got married in 95, right? So that would have been 94-ish. And he was definitely fucked up. I don't know what he was on, but he wasn't coming out of his room.
Yeah. Well, and that was a tough thing because he and I used to do a lot of co-headline stuff together. And he was so much fun. And he always wanted, it was like we loved meeting people and hanging out and partying with people that came to the show and making friends and whatnot. And then after he got into the heroin, he'd go straight back to the hotel and just didn't want to hang out with people anymore. That was the sad thing about Hedberg's demise into the drugs, that he was no longer accessible even to friends. I mean, he'd be hang out during the show, but after the show, immediately back to the hotel and lock the door.
Yeah, I didn't that was going on though. Like, I mean, that was 94, 95. I don't know. I don't feel like I was that close with him, but when that 98, that first, it was like the Seattle Comedy Festival, which I don't think survived. And I was there. I'd gone up there. And I was, I didn't bring no drugs, and I was mad about that. That's been a recurring theme. I showed up in Aspen with no pot, and I had to follow you around like a goddamn
you did.
puppy.
I got that great photo.
I know. I put it up on Twitter. I love that photo.
And it's great because we're in an alley in Aspen, and there's snow everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like really postcardy, even though we're like in an alley. Mm-hmm. And you are hitting this joint.
I know. I have that picture.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. I was so mad. I didn't never prepare right, or I didn't want to fly with it. So then I got to run around looking for people that thought, like, what was I thinking? Not to have any weed. Like, I love the weed. But yeah, so like I show up in Seattle and Mitch is loaded for bear, and we're co-headlining, and we didn't sleep for days. And I was smoking heroin with him, and I'd never really done foiling that tar. And him and Lynn would disappear into the bathroom because I guess they were booting it. And I didn't know that, and I was not a heroin guy. But I was there, and he had a lot of, a lot of balloons of dope. And I was like, and I flew home all sweaty. I remember I threw up in the planter. I was waiting online to pay my bill at the hotel, and I was like, and I hadn't slept in days, and I had to go outside, and I threw up in the plant.
Wow. And
then I got into a car to go to the airport, and I saw Mitch coming back from Subway. Like, I don't know, I'd gone to pack. And I was fucking a mess. And I got on that airplane, and I was at the window seat, and I was like, I'm just going to crash. Maybe I'll be able to hide this from the wife. And the woman next to me had some sort of horrendous fucking cough. And I hated her so much because she was just there. I couldn't fucking sleep. And I was just giving her stink eye. I was like sweating out heroin. It's gross. And then it happened again. At the Chicago Comedy Festival, like the first or second one, me and Stebbins got hold of fucking 8 balls, went at it 2 or 3 days at it, and then it was just that was the end of it, man. That was the fucking end of it. I went to check out at the hotel, and Stebbins' brother was working. He worked at the hotel, and he said to me, years later, he goes, "Dude, your luggage was sweating."
So what was your bottoming out? What was the wake up? What was your busting your head open in Philadelphia moment?
Well, just like those two were pretty good. That that I would lay in bed. I'd go Get Blow in New York. And I was doing Luna, and I'd given up on a career, and I was married, and it wasn't a good marriage, and I wasn't getting a lot of work, and it just looked like things weren't going to work out with me. So I would do Blow. So like on Wednesday, what night was Luna? Monday?
Yeah. So
I'd fucking, go out and fucking get Blow.
Oh man, Monday. Your Luna shows were fantastic.
Yeah.
I loved those shows. You think that's where like your momentum started? Because I really thought you kind of hit hyperspace on performance level back then.
Well, I think what was happening was something that sort of happened in San Francisco too, was that San Francisco afforded us the luxury of really embracing whatever we wanted to talk about. You weren't beholden to punchlines in San Francisco. It was sort of a open-minded comedy town. Like, you could fucking take chances. You could go out there and fucking really kind of in New York, you got to be pretty punchline efficient, and you learn how to do that. So I was learning how to do that. I don't mind doing that. It's good. But Luna was like just when we started it. To me, the idea was you go up with no jokes and you fucking work. You just see what you get in it. And I did that, for better or for worse. Like, a lot of times it wasn't funny, but it was definitely real and it was definitely present. So I learned how to do that there because there was no pay. You know, I mean, I was a fucking veteran club comic by that time. I've been doing it a few years, doing comedy clubs. And this was just this place where you go, you don't do your material, and you just fucking get it. You know, you get in it. You get real. So that's certainly where I learned how to do that. But I always left there feeling shitty.
Because you really created a thing. It was like the hot show.
Yeah.
And, you know, you invited me to do it, and you know, you said, you know, don't come and do your act. You know, go push it a little further.
Yeah.
And go in depth about yourself and what you're feeling about things.
Yeah.
And I forget, but the room was really tiny, maybe 50, 60 people.
People sitting on the floor.
And people sat on the floor, Indian
And then it got
style.
so big, yeah.
And it was, you couldn't get in there.
Yeah.
It was packed. And then I remember you did do one mean thing, though, that I thought was...
Did a lot of mean things.
When Robert Klein came.
Oh, that was the original place. That was at Rebar.
He did a set. you like...
No, that's not what happened.
What happened?
He was there. Like that wasn't a Luna. That was Rebar. That was the original place where they started, and it didn't last there. It didn't. That was in a weird part of town. It was over on the 20s, on sort of on the west side ish. It was definitely not a good performance venue, but that's where that alt thing started. That's where the show Eating It started. So that's pre Luna. And, you know, I would go there, and they didn't even have a stool on the stage. They had this fucked up kind of modern arty stool from the bar, because it was like an arty kind of, it was bad. And he was there. I can't remember if he did a set or not, but I was doing my shit, and then he interrupted me.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, and he heckled me kind of, and then he got up and he wanted to play. You know, so like we sort of sparred a bit. But I still was mad at him, because I got I have no real love for that guy. He's not one of my guys.
Yeah, he was never one of my heroes either.
But I mean, in time, I grew to appreciate him. He was pretty amazing. Those records are amazing. But I was mad at him. I was mad at him for doing that. And then, like, you know, I guess it got in on page 6 or something, or word got out that he was there. And the next week, I got on stage and I shit on him.
I guess that was the week I was there.
Yeah, but he was a dick. After I got off stage, you know, he was lounging around, flirting with chicks, you know, and I was talking to some girl that used to hang out, you know, and he kind of walked up where I was talking to her, and he looks at her and goes, you know, when the novelty wears off, you know, let me know.
Oh, Christ.
Like, you know, he took a shot at me off stage.
Okay.
You know, this pompous windbag that he was.
Yeah.
And like, so I the next week I talked about it and I shit on him, and then because some fan of his showed up, because she had heard that he was there, and she wrote his manager, Rory Rosegarden, who I ran into at Penn Station just by coincidence. He's like, "What's the problem with you and Robert?" And I'm like, hey, other than he was a dick, you know. He's like, Robert.
Okay, I must have been there the week after when you like shat on it.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
And I didn't know the first part. I just thought, because I was never a fan of the guy, I never liked his comedy. Even when I was young, I thought that whole doo-wop in the men's bathroom thing I thought was goofy. But then I felt bad for him that he was like an old guy and you were shitting on him. I didn't know he was mean to you.
Oh, he's like, oh. Like, you know, like those records are really good, and he did an amazing thing. He never had his, you know, he was poised to be something much bigger than he turned out to be. You know, he went to Broadway, he did some movies, this and that, some TV or whatever. But, you know, he could have had Carlin's career, but there was it's in that book. It's in the Zoglin book.
The Comedians.
No, the one you read.
Oh, Comedy at the Edge.
Yeah. What happened to Robert Klein? Like, you know, through mismanagement and some wrong moves, you know, he got kind of missed in a big way.
Right.
But some comics love him, you know, like Dana Gould. There are guys that, you know, he's their guy. And I can appreciate him. But every time I've talked to him, and I've interviewed him before on Air America too, just the blowhard, you know, arrogant guy. But like, I've talked to a lot of people now. I don't have any resentment towards him, you know, and I can definitely respect him. But at those junctures, you know, the first time being him heckling me, and then, you know, cock blocking me. And then, you know, the second time I interviewed him, it was okay, but it was like, you know, all right, he'd written a book, and I was nice to him. Like, I could probably have a pretty good conversation with him, but I think he's a kind of an angry, bitter egocentric guy. But he's
Well, I didn't know
he's
that-
old now. So.
I didn't know that he was belittling the alternative movement or whatever you want to call it.
No,
was happening
I don't
back
think he
then.
really did. I think
That
he wanted
came in
to
pompous and
he
stuff.
wanted to play. Like Robin used to like to play.
Right.
And I'm open to playing, but his I was doing some joke about something. He said, "Don't knock the eggheads," and I didn't even know what the eggheads were. Eggheads are kind of smarty pants. I don't remember what the joke was, but it was he was schooling me, and then he wanted to and we got up on stage and we did a little thing. It was fine, but I got dragged into it. I wasn't like, oh wow, this is amazing. I'm gonna I'm gonna improv with Robert Crumb.
Okay. Well, anyway, I didn't. I'm glad you cleared that.
Now you know the whole story.
Yeah, thanks.
But
because what I wanted to talk to you about, one thing I wanted to say is, you and I became friends in San Francisco, and then that period in New York, 98, 99, I was partying my balls off.
I know, and it was funny because I remember it. The one day you were partying your balls off, you made a lot of money, and you come over to my house and you had no weed. It was funny because I remember that I said I had to hook you up with some pot. Because I was bitter. I was living on 16th Street. I may have been. I don't know if I was still hosting the Comedy Central show, but it was before I moved to Astoria.
No. So it's the Astoria period.
You came over before. I think it was before you lived there. It's when your show. Your show was on, and you were flying high. And I was living on 16th Street.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure I came and visited you there.
Yeah, because that's why you didn't have any weed, because you weren't living there.
Yeah.
So you came over and I was bitter, not happy.
You were subletting this tiny apartment, right?
Nope.
Okay, all right, maybe not.
Nope. I had an apartment on the Lower East Side in 89, 91.
That must be what I'm talking about. And
that was like that. I rent that was like a one-room apartment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember that meeting.
Okay,
but
I think I've seen all your.
I rarely hung out in that
domiciles.
apartment with people. There was nowhere to sit even.
Yeah,
it was a sad place.
I remember it distinctly.
Sad place. Had that red table and one bookshelf and the giant futon frame, and my stereo was on the floor, and there's a little kitchen in between the bathroom and the rest of the place. Ugh, that was sad.
Okay,
that was 89. That to 91, I lived there, and then I moved to San Francisco. No, this was must have been 93, 94. When was your show on?
96 to 97. And then I moved to New York, 98, 99. And that's what I'm talking about. So that period was when
96.
Hedberg's living at the Chelsea. And then also, I was hanging out with Dave Attell every night. And Attell had this little universe of
96.
dive bars that he would go to. Really strange hole-in-the-wall bars. And so I would go out with him and just, drink. If I wasn't doing, Coke with Hedberg, I was drinking like a fish with Attell. And so, I was partying hard. The sitcom was done.
What I remember, this is what happened. You'd gotten the sitcom, you'd gotten money, you were visiting New York, and I was pissed off about Hollywood and about everything else. And I just remember, I'm getting you high at my apartment with Kim. It must have been right before we got married, because we got married and that's when we moved to Astoria. So this is maybe you were just starting to shoot it, or the deal just went down.
Yeah.
And you were like a made guy.
Yeah.
You got the episode commitment, and you were just all cocky, going Hollywood's pretty good when you're on top, smoking my weed, and I just remember hating you, motherfucker. It's pretty good when you're on top.
Hey, Smooth,
telling me,
can you make some more coffee, please?
Telling me about the caddies you bought for your family.
Yeah, I bought everybody a car. Mm-hmm.
The fuck is we you flirting? Don't you know how to hold on to money,
No.
you dumb fuck?
No, I don't.
Who the fuck does that in comedy? Like you and Lenny Clark. You gotta go out and got a 12-episode commitment, you go buy a fucking yacht. like you just got tenure. Fuck.
Yeah. Well, how many pro athletes think they're only going to do one season? So I'm glad you remember that slice of our history. That I was trying to get to a further place.
I just want to make sure I got that out. That I put it into perspective.
Okay.
Pretty good when you're on top.
That's great. You being seething with bitterness and jealousy.
Horrendous.
That's fantastic.
You were just so self-satisfied and all set.
Because I was trying to get to a more pleasant story about you. So 98, 99, I'd lived in New York when I was 20 like a dog. Always swore if I had money, I'd live there with style. So I got a Rockstar apartment in the Wall Street area. 98, 99. So, partying with Hedberg, Attell.
And I'm gone by
doing
then.
sets every night. So I've been working on a book.
Oh, no, I guess I was there. Where was I? I was
You
there.
were living in Astoria.
Yeah, that's right.
So, like 99, I'm
Yeah.
guessing this is.
Well,
So-
99 is when my shit hit the fan. Right. So that's when the marriage, the first marriage broke up and everything. But yeah, I was
Okay,
in a
well
story.
then, because things were still
then.
great with
Right.
you and Kim.
Right.
So maybe this is 98.
A little before, yeah.
Okay, so and maybe it was when I was there looking for an apartment. So it might have been end of 97. Mm-hmm. All I remember is, and I just rediscovered this in the last couple years because I've been working on a book. I just finished the first draft of it, but I kept diaries at different periods in my life. And I came across this wonderful story about you and me. And sitcom was done. I'm all like, I had lived with this beautiful actress who kind of dumped me after the sitcom was done. She got pregnant, aborted my child. I was just like, in show business went ice cold on me after the sitcom finished. I was pissed off at humanity, show business, Los Angeles, everything when I moved to New York. And I got deeper into drugs and alcohol than I ever had. I was always a weed guy.
Yeah.
Before that, before 98, I never really did coke or, a sniff here and there, but never like a full commitment.
Right.
And so you had cleaned up somewhat. You're living with Kim in Astoria.
Yeah.
You invited me over for dinner, and I remember being just like in this, balls out party period of my life, and like being so humbled at your house. You had this nice little apartment in Astoria.
Yeah.
Kim, I loved her.
Yeah, she's great.
She made this wonderful dinner.
I probably made it.
Or you might have made it, and we had this great night, and I'm like, wow, this is what like a nice happy life can be like.
Yeah.
This is so you're like jealous of me over the sitcom, and I'm a few years later, I'm in your apartment in Astoria, kind of jealous of you and where you were. In your life with a relationship.
Yeah, I was like dying inside, but that was
that's not that's not what I read.
No, but like
I read
but I liked having.
Wow, this is a loving home.
Yeah, well, it was,
and
I mean,
having a friend over, and you guys were like concerned about me.
Sure,
like are you eating enough vegetables? Are you?
Well, I'd been
drinking
there.
too much.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'd already been through that shit. The one thing about me, and it's sort of a testament to our relationship, is that no matter how fucked up I was or whatever, I wouldn't turn friends away.
Yeah.
And I would, I've got my problems, but most of the people I have found over the years of talking to them and seeing myself a certain way, and then actually talking to people who've known me for years who saw me another way, is that like all you guys that knew me, you weren't mad at me. You were just sort of like, well, that's Mark. Like it's
I mean, and you were a handful
at times. Yeah.
At times,
right?
But we never were not friends.
Exactly.
And then even when you were balanced or doing well, and I wasn't, we still were friends.
Exactly.
It's been a seesaw for both of us.
Yeah, and it's just because like really, I mean, you were the reason that I got sought out management. You were like, there was a time in San Francisco where like, I was frustrated and I knew I was unique and funny. And like when you were working with Dave Becky, when he was still like, an assistant almost, like, or what do you call it? A junior manager under Jimmy Miller. At Miller Baker Messina.
Yeah, I was his first client. He started managing me when he was managing the San Diego Improv.
Right. So you were with him, but he was working for Jimmy Miller.
Yeah.
And like I saw you and I got to know you in San Francisco, and I'm like, well, Tom's really about the closest to where I'm working in terms of the area, you know, of style. And I'm like, well, if that fucker will manage him, he'll manage me.
I like how spite has fueled so much of your career.
All of it. All of it. The first fucking 10 years, 15 years.
All of it.
All of it. It was all spite. That's the only reason I got opportunities is I was the guy going like, what the fuck? What do you
mean?
Yeah. All of it. That's how I got all my TV. Just sort of like, why is that guy getting it? Well, that's ridiculous. Yelling at people on the phone. Becky got to the point with me where it was like, I don't have to take this. You hang up on me. I'm like, what? That was a fucking pain in the ass.
Squeaky wheel syndrome.
But but I mean, I could deliver. You know what I mean? Like, no one really knew what to do with me. But like,
you were always a great comedian.
Yeah.
Even
so like,
even when you were fucked up, even when no one knew who you were never not a fantastic, brilliant comedian.
Yeah, I could do the work. Like, you know, if I got a TV shot, I wasn't going to blow it.
You just were very successful at shooting yourself in the foot.
I think I was exactly. I think I was difficult to sort of be around. You know, I was not anyone's first choice to hang out with. Do you know what I mean? Hence, I'm knocking on your door at daybreak to do blow with me in the park.
Yeah,
you know, like you were it.
Which is funny because at that time I was in a very happy relationship with Natalie,
that French lady,
the French woman, and so like, and I had this.
Was she a flight attendant?
No.
Worked at a hotel,
concierge.
Right,
hotel.
that's right.
Yeah, and so I remember like, oh man, just come up, man. We'll have some tea with my lady.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, man, you got to come out and talk to me. So then the flip side,
no ladies.
The flip side of that coin is years later.
You're coming to my house,
in New York, and I come to your house in Astoria, and then you're like.
It's funny, yeah.
It seemed like, you know, you had this.
No, we were all right. You know, I liked that house, and we were doing okay.
So you're concerned about me, and this is, I'm so glad I wrote about it. Otherwise, I would have forgotten the story. And I don't know what's going to go into my book because I've just written so much. I'm trying to crunch it down now.
Yeah,
I'm doing the first like rewrite and everything. But,
yeah.
So you were like, you know, I guess trying to cheer me up because I was pretty heartbroken. You know, like
I've been spit out by that town. So, like, you know, I mean, I you know, look, I'm a big-hearted guy.
You are.
I am, and you know, and there's certainly, you know, guys I have history with that, you know, I don't think twice about, you know, reaching out to or being there for it. Yeah, I was concerned. I do remember it, but you always had you know, you were never short on swagger. So, you know, you were tough to read. You know, you weren't going to let on anything. And, you know, and I think you continued that. And I think you would have continued it if you hadn't swaggered yourself off a stool.
Yeah. So you want to cheer me up. And you go, this is when we're having dinner at your place in Astoria with Kim. And you go, hey, man, let's whatever, like Thursday, Friday, me and you will take a little field trip. Let's go out to Coney Island, man.
Oh yeah.
And so we made this date, and we took the long ass subway ride.
Yeah.
To Coney Island, and and it's all written in my book or diary, whatever you want to call it. There was some religious woman who comes up and can I ask you guys a question? Do you know Jesus? And I got very indignant with the woman that how dare her come up and like, you know, sully Jesus's good name by bothering people on a subway, and that you should be showing by example. And like, it was this weird like, and I was like, I'm reading I'm reading the diary, and I'm like, wow, I'm really surprised that I'm
surprised too,
because I'm from like these real hardcore.
I know you must have been in a pretty dark place.
I was in a bad mood. So I shut the woman down for like bothering.
You didn't want Jesus to know what you were up to. Because that's one of the best stories about me and you and Aspen. Go ahead, finish your story.
Okay, so yeah, I'll finish this real quick. So you called this. You go this because Coney Island was like all shut down and everything. You go.
It's just a little bleak.
This field trip. we're gonna go visit the ghost of fun, man.
Yeah, the ghost of
fun.
Yeah.
Like the fun is dead, and it's just a ghost of fun. And you and I are walking around Coney Island. It was like a gray, overcast day, and there's like Russian Jews walking around in fuzzy hats, and it was just, there was nothing out there. The rides were, shut down, and
there's only that one roller coaster, the Cyclone, and then there's that weird one that's set from Annie Hall that it's all covered with moss. The roller coaster they built for the movie Annie Hall is there, but it's just like covered with moss and behind a fence.
Yeah. Okay,
was Kim with us?
Okay, here's the end
Was
of the
Kim
story.
with us?
Huh? No, it's just you and I.
Yeah.
No, it's just you and I. So you and I'm all heartbroken over this girl, and I'm just pouring my heart out to you, and I'm telling you, and how, like, I still love her, man. She aborted my child, and I still love her, man. And you go, you were like, we're locked in as friends, and you go, well, maybe it'll work out, man. Maybe you should just call her, And so, like, I got home to my apartment that day, and I called her.
Yeah.
And she's like, she was with a guy. And it was, like, so uncomfortable. She's like talking to me, and she's like, I think I started crying, and she's like, are you okay? And I go, yeah, I'm okay. I'm just a little sad. And she goes, no, I wasn't talking to you. I'm talking to Brian. She goes, it's okay. I'll be off the phone in a minute. Just let me handle this. Or, like, I can hear her in the background. It was just like, just a total disaster.
I'm glad you called her. Put that shit to rest.
But
That was good
like,
advice.
Anytime you might have irritated me, you were such a good friend to me at that time in my life.
I think the funny thing is what's interesting is that given where you and I have both been, and that was so long ago, that the advice would definitely be different now. If you were in a similar place, I'd be like, fuck her.
Let it go. Cut that shit.
It's like Stebbins said to me, man. You know him, right?
No.
You don't know David Stebbins? He's a good friend of mine. He's a Florida guy.
He's from Florida.
Yeah. He's down there now. I got to call him. But when I'm in the middle of when Mishna left me, and I was leveled, and it was bad. It was ugly. I was hemorrhaging money from the divorce. My career was in the shit. I was fucking leveled. And there was like 2 or 3 dudes I'd call every fucking day. Jerry Stahl, David Stebbins, my sponsor, Steve. And that was it. That was the rotation. And they'd take the call, sometimes 2 or 3 a day. And, like Stebbins, when I was married to Kim and I got sober, I was getting sober, and that's where I met Misha. She got me sober, and I was just fucking taken with her. And Stebbins was the guy, when I was like, I don't know what to do, man. I think I'm in love with this fucking beautiful young chick. And he's like, you gotta do it, man. You only live once, man. You gotta do it. Wait, you got nothing to just fucking do it. And and then I remember asking my buddy Sam, who was married, and he was the other side of it was like, I don't know, it'll fade. You know what I mean? Just kind of ride it out and stay on the straight and narrow. And then I'm like, no, I don't know. I think I'm gonna go with Stebbins. That was the beginning of it. So he's there at the beginning of it. And then when I'm in the middle of the fucking end of it, he goes, just gonna have to take the hit, man. And ultimately, that's not what you want to hear. But that's exactly right.
Yeah. But it's funny, taking the hit,
it's
and you get older, my father was killed by a drunk driver in 2009. My sister dies of breast cancer in 2011. When you have these kind of tragedies of losing the people you love the most in life, and you look back on your life, at times you spent fucked up over some heartbreak, it's laughable. It
is.
You thought that was pain. That's not pain.
Yeah, I guess I really haven't experienced a lot of that yet. My parents are still with me, and my brother's okay.
What were you gonna? I want to hear the story from.
No, I will. But but heartbreak is real, and you don't know how many of those you got in your life. It doesn't compare to the loss of family members to death and whatnot. But heartbreak, you get to a certain I don't know if I could deal with another one, really, dude.
No. No, I never. I gotta write bad poetry for 2 years.
Oh, God, it's just so fucking horrible. Oh, the story about Jesus is one of the best stories.
Oh yeah,
I just love it. I just love that stuff because it was such a great moment. I had heard, I don't remember who told me that you were a Christian and that you were, brought up a Christian, but it was just one of those classic Marin Dick fucking moments.
You're ranting and pissed.
Well, no, I'm about to go on stage at Aspen. Yeah. You're sitting in the corner with a bunch of the other comics, being your fucking dumb chipper self, laughing, having a good time, being a pirate. I'm about to go on after Kathy Griffin just took her blouse off for some fucking reason. And I was like, this is going to suck. It's something along the lines where I was just like doing my standard miserable pre-show fucking rant. And I look at you and you're just, acting all cool. And I go like, maybe be better if I had Jesus on my side. And you just looked at me smiling and you say, you do.
You do, man.
Jesus is for everybody. It was so smart.
Well,
What was that other great line that made you start using in your act that I liked?
Hell
was invented
hell
to make stupid people act right.
Hell was a concept created to get dumb people to act right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
I was like, you don't use that, I'm taking it.
Yeah. I said that we were talking about the Jesus freaks. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever end up using it?
I did it on my last special.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah. And I only started doing it on stage because you said,
"Oh yeah,
you have to do that on stage."
Yeah.
If you don't do it, I will. And I was like, "Oh wow, okay." I didn't, I thought it was more of a statement than like a funny thing.
Yeah.
But no, that was a brilliant line.
Yeah.
So
good one. I wouldn't have stolen it, obviously.
No, of course not.
Trying to,
but no, like friends need to prod each other sometimes. But I remember coming to see the Jerusalem Syndrome.
Oh yeah,
in New York when you were working on that.
In the small room or the big room?
Small room.
Oh boy,
yeah.
You sat there for one of those 2-hour things.
Yeah,
tried to be supportive afterwards.
Well, it was impressive. I mean, you've always been really striving as an artist, comedian.
Oh, some of those things would last like 2 hours. I still do that. I still do the like these sets I'm doing at the Tripany House.
Yeah,
I'll still do an hour and a half of fucking, I don't know what. It's gonna go.
But you did a thing on there that, I think it was very prophetic about, because there wasn't cell phone technology the way there is now.
Right.
And you talked about, you went to Israel and you got this brand new video camera and that you were experiencing your trip through the lens of the camera.
Right.
And it came one point, or like one of your friends that you were visiting said, put the fucking camera down and look through your eyes.
Yeah.
And like now, the whole world is like that. Everyone is, like I saw the Rolling Stones last June, and like everyone is watching it through their phones.
Yes.
No
Capturing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was like, that show, like I really thought like, so much work, dude. Everything was going, like that was crazy because that was when Kim and I were breaking up and Mishna was fucking in my life, and she lived right by the theater, and I'm trying to do the shows, and then we got the deal to do the show like legitimately off Broadway. We had a 6-week run, and I really thought that was gonna do something. It got me the first book, and there's parts of that book I'm very proud of, but like ultimately it never took me over. You know what I mean?
Oh, I thought it kind of it set you rolling. Like
not really. Like the book came out like in 2011, which was not a.
Because Ashton and I talk about this all the time, where in England, comedians will do like 1-hour shows.
No, it didn't do it for me.
For Edinburgh, and then like in Holland, they do these cabaret shows where there is always a story in the hour.
Well, it taught me how to do that, and I like the show, and I like the book, but it didn't have much traction. It didn't go anywhere. I didn't travel with it. I didn't really know about Edinburgh, and I don't know if I would have liked it. I would never go back there now. I mean, I went once, but like I just it just didn't really, it didn't move.
I thought it did because you got the book out of it.
Yeah, I got the book, but that's like what the first book. What is that deal really? Like I thought it would be amazing, but it was like $30,000, right? And I wrote the book, and it came out like within months of 9/11, and nothing really happened with it, and there was nothing I could do about it. And then the marriage broke up, and I just gave her. Like I had no money, and I gave her half of the book deal money, and and it just sort of passed. Like there were so many things like that, so many deals and things that just passed. Like nothing really got me anything. By the time I started the podcast, I could barely get road work, and people knew me and I was respected and I did TV and stuff, but I wasn't making a living, dude. And it was.
Well, that's a nice. It's a timeless work of art, though.
Kinda.
Instead of because as a comedian, you can't just do a bunch of random jokes anymore. You have to have a story. So and one of the things I remember, like your album that you did after September 11th, I thought was really where you're going. What, we're not supposed to laugh anymore,
right? Like
laughter's dead. It's inappropriate to make jokes.
Yeah.
And like now, I'll hear that pop up on Sirius XM.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be like, wow, man, he was speaking to the ages.
Yeah, not so bad.
You got to be speaking to the ages.
I like that
when you do comedy. And I remember at the time you doing that stuff. I remember like, well, that's ballsy. He's talking about it. But like now, years later, hearing it, I'm like, wow, that's really, you really nailed this moment in time in American history.
Yeah, there was a couple of jokes. Yeah, that record was kind of interesting because it was like I just had this kid record me at Stand Up New York, and it was just one performance. It was one performance, and the audio wasn't that great. I had to have Dan Schlissel remaster it and reissue it. Like when I made that record, it was not sold out, I think, and like I remember, like I self pressed it, the CD. I ordered it at one of those places that do bulk, so I had hundreds of them, not even in the gem case, but in the envelope. The envelope case. Yeah. And I thought I was going to sell them, going to make a bunch of money, hundreds of those fucking things. Finally, I don't remember when I threw them out, but I threw them out.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if I have one of those, because I used some of it was like this club setting, some artwork, but I used the cast of the movie Freaks in there that I didn't even have rights to that picture. And, it was this one very weird performance, not that long after 9/11, but it was like 60 people in that room. And it was like, it was intense. A lot of that stuff I did only once. And like on all of my specials and records, there's stuff on there that I did very few times. And I'd be curious to listen to that. There was one particular bit on there that I really want to listen to again about, the paranoia of like, the FBI has probably got me on a list. And that sort of moment where you're like, well, they don't.
Yeah.
What the fuck? What have you done? Like, because I think the premise of it was like everyone, you can go to the FBI, or you can go to the wherever and get your file. It's public. Yeah. Like, could you imagine going down this like, I'm Marc Maron, I want to see my file, and they're like, we don't have file. Maybe you don't know Marc Maron, MARON. There's no fucking file. Like. And it was this idea, like I can't remember how the bit was set up, but like, feel bad for the detail they assigned to me, the FBI guys. So I guys jerking off again. Now he's crying. and the punchline was like, yeah, the punchline is this guy's an enemy to the state. He's an enemy to himself. So let this play itself out. Like, it was a really good joke. Yeah, I should listen to that thing again.
That was great. And was it that record or Jerusalem Syndrome I
never put that out.
You used to be really, worked up about government and everything, which I always, I think conspiracy theorists are the spice of life, and you go to DC and you're visiting your friends.
That's from the Jerusalem Syndrome. That's in the book. That never made it onto a record. Jerusalem Syndrome
was such a great story, and your buddy turns to you and you're like, man, and it's all the government, the world, new world order.
Yeah.
And your buddy turns to you and
Jim,
you go, dude, they're just not that organized.
Not that organized. Yeah. That's great. I still talk to Jim. He still works in the government. He's on Kerry's plane. Jim, he works with Senator Kerry, Secretary of State Kerry. He's been in government for years. He knows all the stories. And they're organized, but not that. That's not, the conspiracy theories are not half as interesting as what really goes on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it took them, 15 years to tell us the Saudis funded September 11th. I mean.
Really? I thought that we knew that.
They could have broken that news a little earlier.
It was confirmed.
Just recently. The 28 pages that are missing.
Right.
And I think an interesting transition in your career from going and you and I have talked about it a lot, just hanging out in clubs and stuff, where like you got away from the political stuff and talking more about the personal stuff. And you were telling me some story about
That was from disillusionment.
You came up with some great bit, and then you saw another comedian recently do a similar bit, and you're like, I know the guy didn't steal it, man. There's just too many comedians now.
Yeah.
It's just everybody's got looking at the same things and writing the same jokes. And you were like, the only way to come up with original material is to talk about your own personal experiences.
Right.
Nobody can take that from you.
Right.
And that really kind of is where, you know, we are in the world. There's just like, not only comedians, just like millions of people hitting Twitter jokes every day. There's all these, you know, political television shows and monologues and
it's rare to find a new angle on it, you know, and even when you do, the window of usage is so small, you know, with pop culture, with politics. You know, I just started talking about, like, I've been talking about politics a little bit, and it's funny because I was on stage last night even, or talking about it.
When you're talking about vote for the angry...
the angry Jew or the lady?
Yeah.
Even if that's all you know about them?
Yeah.
That and the other thing, like I came up with some other stuff about you know, being a Trump supporter, being misguided. Like it's so you were badly parented and you had a shitty idea of what a father is. So now we're all going to pay for it, you know? So like it's okay joke. It's a good observation. But like I get a tone that I used to have all the time to deliver that stuff. Because like I can feel the shift. I can feel the difference between me being me and me being slightly righteous in order to deliver it. Because you can't just be like, oh shucks, to deliver that shit, really. You know, like if I'm saying something and if I'm making a choice to go, you're wrong, you know, about this, you know, and I'm going to defend it, you know, I have a different tone. And I was on stage last night in the middle of those jokes and I go, look, I don't even love my tone right now. I don't really love this side of me, but I've only got a window here where I'm going to do this, you know. But that used to be all of my tone. It used to be all that.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And I'm so relieved that it's gone. You know, like even like and sometimes even when we're talking here, me and you, like I got to be careful because I do not wear any sort of self-righteousness or cockiness well. Like, and I think that's one of the reasons I was so difficult is that, you know, out of my insecurity, I was very cocky and I'm not good at that. You know, some people are cute when they're cocky. I'm just sort of like, fuck that guy. You know, and I was like, even the tone that I had right here with you about Robert Klein, I don't feel great about that. Cause like, you know, it sort of triggers something like, no, that dude, you know, like I don't need to be there. You know, I was with Bill Burr the other night at a party.
I just thought of the... Go ahead.
But, you know,
I'm sorry.
I was with Burr at a party and we started talking about somebody, you know, like, and I started to be like, you know, fuck that guy. He's like, no, not Mark, no, come on, let's keep it, stay open. I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
You've come so far, you know, like, let's not go there. Don't go that far.
Yeah. And you really have come so far. And I just popped into my mind a really hilarious Mark Maron line that you said between you and I. We were talking about a former friend who is kind of lost in his own bitterness.
Yeah.
And you said, he's the fuck that guy. And I know because I used to be the fuck that guy. Nobody knows that better than me because I was the fuck that guy. That's hilarious. When you're just so like angry and you're just, well, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I know who we're talking about. Yeah, I don't know how to make that right. I tried, but it didn't work. It's okay.
Your self-revelations, though, and exploration of personal stories, I think has always been, you know, your strength, even though, you know, you moved away from being, you know, a political, you know, hammer.
Yeah.
But when you did Scorching the Earth,
oh, yeah.
I saw that in Montreal.
Yeah.
When you did that at the festival, and you know,
Everybody was
I saw Jerusalem Syndrome. I've known you for years. I've seen everything.
Oh, when they put me in that little theater and people worked out sort of like walk. Oh, that was heavy. Yeah, Scorching the Earth.
I was there.
Yeah.
I've seen everything you've done through the years.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I ever saw you, and I was just like, I mean, I was like kind of squirming in my chair a few times and like, and like, I mean, I was shocked at the level of honesty and the balls that took you to be able to talk about these things. Like, she comes over, your ex-wife, and you're miserable.
We just show me your ass and let me jerk off. Show me your ass
and let me jerk off.
Yeah.
And you said that, and I was like, oh my God, he's the bravest comedian ever. That is like, got to be like one of the lowest moments of anyone's life, and you just laid it out for the audience.
Oh God. Yeah, there was some uncomfortable.
Just show me your ass.
Yeah. She's like, do you really want that? And I'm like, yeah, I do. She wouldn't do it. And then I added
the part where she's not going to heaven, Mark.
Yeah, well, then I had that part where I'm like on the porch going, I'm going to do it anyway. That was brutal, man. I don't even know. Like, that was really one of those. I think probably one of a really pure example of comedy saving my life. Because I didn't know what else to do with that shit, dude. And, you know, I was trying to work that shit out on stage as it was happening. Because I didn't know what else to do with it. Because it was going to kill me. Like, the pain of it. And, you know, my part in it. Like in that show, you know, I don't look good. You know, it's no victory lap. You know, it's me sort of like, you know, I fucked up.
No, yeah. You're very honest and very.
And I don't know if it was funny, and a lot of those audiences, it was very jarring. I knew it was something. I mean, I know I'm compelling, and I know people would listen to me, but like, I didn't have a handle on the emotions of that thing. Probably not even there. Like, I don't remember when that was, but like, I just knew I had to keep working, and I wasn't going to be able to write about anything else. What else was I going to talk about? It was my life was destroyed, and there was no sort of like, well, I'll just write about dogs. You know, I'm not that kind of guy. So it was one of those things where I'm going to either disappear into this sad bitterness, or I'm going to keep working. And this is the only thing I'm going to be able to talk about until I don't. And I did. And I remember when I was working that shit out in New York in a basement beneath where Mike Birbiglia was doing his hit show, the first one. I was in the basement of that theater, where, you know, the lights didn't even fucking work right. And the guy who was promoting it, like, tried to, you know, finagle me into, like, you know, like, I don't even remember that guy's name, but what a nightmare all that turned out to be. Dylan Godino was involved in it, and I was workshopping all that stuff. And it wasn't supposed to be for anybody. I was just trying to fucking put it together. I needed a space to do it. And then Time Out New York showed up and fucking wrote it up. And they were basically like, the amazing thing about this show is Maron seems to have no hindsight. So it sounds like he's really going through it. And I'm like, yeah, I was. Yeah. But I also knew, like, this is probably not repeatable. Like, whatever that was. Like, I think some of it's on Final Engagement. The one I did did one CD at Stand Up New York for 60 people. That one at Post 9/11 one. And I did 2 at fucking Giggles. Only because I knew Terry would just let me show up on a month or two notice to do this. So, like, and I'd call Schlissel in Minneapolis. I'm like, will you meet me in Seattle? I think I got things. So he would tape like 4 or 5 shows, and we just put something together. But I did 2 there. And Final Engagement is that breakup CD. It's 2 CDs. Now, I don't know how much of that shit is funny. I mean, it's, you know, it's heavy, you know.
But it seems like the more honest and raw you got about the truth in your life, that's when your star really started to rise.
I think the star really started to rise because of the podcast. Like, you know, despite all my history of comedy or whatever the fuck I did, the truth is that what put me on the map and what, you know, enabled me to sell tickets was the podcast. It wasn't the stand-up per se. Like, the stand-up sort of, like, I think a lot of people that became fans of the podcast were like, wow, he's a comedian. Oh, God, he's a real comedian. They had to backload it, you know?
Do you think it was the Robin Williams interview that really put the podcast on the map?
I mean, I guess, but, you know, I think it put podcasts on the map in a way. I mean, still, like, you know, the difference between how many listeners I had, you know, when I did Robin, which was years ago, which was 2011 or whatever, and now where I have, like, you know, anywhere from, you know, 600,000 to 1 million listeners per episode eventually, you know, to then, where maybe, you know, that got me up to, you know, wherever it was, 50,000 or whatever. You know, I don't know. I can't really, like, that was part of the growth of it, but it wasn't, you know, it didn't, I think it brought more attention to the idea of podcasts and to, you know, and to WTF. The article in the New York Times in 2009 is, you know, around the same time, or 2011, I guess that was.
I thought it was really beautiful. How you got him to honestly open up about people had accused him of stealing jokes and stuff, and
It was an amazing morning.
and he was saying, you know,
It's just by virtue of the fact that we were just alone, and that he was willing to, you know, have me in his home and sit there with me one-on-one. Like, you know, I think, and I've said this before, that like if there was anyone else in the room, he would have felt compelled to perform. But because it was just this, you know, what's he going to do? Put a show on for me? You know, like, you know, he did go into the tone, but it was all very, you know, natural. But I think the difference was, it was, you know, it was in his house. It was morning, you know, and it was, you know, and he had just come off a relapse, I think. And, I don't know, it took a lot to, you know, we had to jump through a lot of hoops to get access to him. He's very well protected. Even if he wants to do something, they're very protective of his name and how it's promoted and the window of promotion. And you know, a lot of things had to happen for him just to sit down with me and do that. And I'm sure he had very little to do with it. It was just the machine in place around him, because he had been, but whatever. They, you know, I learned something about that, you know.
about what, him opening up?
Well, no, just about how names are important. That, like, you know, there was some bad blood because, you know, he was involved with a movie where he had a little part, and I think it was an animated, but they put his name up top to sell the thing, and he, you know, so they sort of protect the promotional possibilities of even his name and the picture we could use and that kind of stuff. But no, in terms of the conversation, see, for me, a lot of these things that became, you know, powerful examples of what I do with the podcast they're just like me and you talking right now. Like, I wasn't thinking about that. You know, I knew there were certain things I had to cover as a comic that would be important to other comics with a comic that, you know, the thing that compelled me to even interview him was I got tired of seeing kids dismiss him.
Right.
That, you know, despite whatever you think about Robin Williams, I mean, he's fucking Robin Williams. So to hear some 22-year-old going like, yeah, he's a thief, he's a hack. I'm like, what are you, out of your fucking mind? I mean, whatever you may think of him as a comedian, he did everything you wanted to do. He started as a comic. He had a hit television show. He made movies. He still does comedy. And you're going to sit there and be like, with your 5 minutes of jokes about your shoes and your dumb flannel shirt,
yeah,
you're going to like condescend that guy. And I made me mad. But I knew I'd have to confront him on stuff a little bit. But, you know, it turned out to be a very thoughtful, very touching, and very, you know, horribly sad interview in retrospect. As beautiful as it was, and really I think it is one of maybe two interviews that exist in the world of him being that candid. You know, the end of it was sad, where he talks about suicidal thoughts.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
I remember him saying, you know, what am I going to do? What was I going to do? Not go to comedy clubs? Just about how much he loved comedy and being a comedian.
No, at the end, he's like, he talked about the darkness, about struggling with the voice. You know, the voice around booze and around living. Yeah, it was heavy.
You know, you've really been like the Smithsonian Institution archiving all this, every living comedian.
A lot of them. I mean, there's people that I won't do and that I haven't done for whatever reason. Maybe not won't, but like sometimes I have better success with others. You know, I try to, you know, there's some older guys that I don't think I'm going to get to. And I try to be like, the history of the store I'm kind of compulsive about. And there's still some of those guys that I might want to do that I haven't done yet. Yeah, I don't think of it. I don't think of myself as an archivist, but when I get the opportunity to talk to people, like, you know, I should eventually talk to Argus, and there's, you know, people around the Comedy Store that, you know, because I was sort of obsessed with it and I like the history of it, that I haven't gotten to. And there's some older dudes that I wanted to get to, but I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I think Don Rickles is not going to happen. And Shecky Green, I wanted to talk to, but I don't know if that's going to happen. They're not going to be around forever, but Robert Klein might be good even.
Yeah.
I could probably do him.
You think he would sit down with you?
Yeah.
I forget who. I read something that someone had written about you a few months ago or last year or something, and they said that you were like the Barbara Walters of our generation. Did you see that?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm sure he fucking loves that.
Okay.
I mean,
I'm okay with it. Like, it took me a long time to be comfortable with, because part of my style on the podcast evolved out of not only needing to have conversations with my peers and to sort of move through my own problems, but, I was very, I didn't want to be necessarily known as an interviewer. I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm going to be a stand-up comic. So there was a couple of years there where I was like, I wanted to make sure people knew that I was a comedian, where I was like, I'm glad you like the podcast, but did you like, because people will come to my shows and they're like, I really like the podcast. I'm like, you just watched me for an hour and a half. How'd that go for you?
Well, you've interviewed all your musical heroes.
Yeah. But now those things everything's worked out. However people like me, I'm fine with it. I don't care.
What comedian told you? I always ask comedians, what's the best advice you've ever been given as a comedian? I remember you said on your podcast, somebody told you, don't hang around afterwards and find the one person who enjoyed your set or something.
Oh, I don't know who said that.
Like when you're a young comedian and you do a set and you kind of like...
Linger.
You linger?
Yeah.
Hoping that someone liked your set?
I'm always lingering. I'm lingering on the street. I still linger.
What is the best advice you've ever been given as a comedian?
I don't know. I've learned a lot from, watching comedians still and like from talking to a lot of people. Like, I think that, what happened for me at some point was to realize that, that like I never saw myself as an entertainer. I don't think my intentions were to be an entertainer, even from the beginning. I didn't see a comedian like a stand-up comic. I didn't think of them as entertainers per se. I thought of them as, people that told the truth and that were able to, be philosophers and poets and people that were able to make you look at things in a different way and relieve some of the sort of existential, sadness and tension. I never thought of I just thought comics were comics and entertainment was entertainment. At some point I became a lot more forgiving about almost everybody. That I stopped sort of, it's like there's room, there's, you may not respect somebody, but if they figured out something that works for them as an entertainer, then you're in the same fucking business. I don't care what you do. You're in the same business as they are. And to most people, they don't know the difference. And you can sit there back in the day where you're sitting around with people like Frank Bastille or somebody and making fun of boat acts or, fucking jugglers and prop acts and whatever. Yeah, right. It's not really my cup of tea and there's not a lot of them around anymore. But, when it all comes to pass, they're just some dudes that, found a little fucking thing that worked for them. Yeah. And, as you get older, you realize it rarely works forever. And, and they're just trying to stay on. They're just trying to keep going, trying to keep earning a living, doing the entertainment. So my empathy is expanded in that area,
I had Jim Gaffigan on my podcast and he said a great thing about Carrot Top. He said when he hears people talk shit about Carrot Top, he said he gets angry, he gets defensive. He goes, because I feel like Carrot Top's, I'm related to him because he's a comedian. Like, what do these people fucking know?
Yeah.
They never done stand-up. They don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
And for anybody to put down another comedian, he felt incensed.
Well, you have to be able to, as a comedian, it's tricky because now that there's so many of them around and, you got to just, you got to pick your shots. I mean, we're cultural critics. We have opinions. You want to talk about TV. You want to talk about movies. You want to talk about comedy. You're going to know some of the people involved. So either you get diplomatic or you lose some friends. I've done both.
Well, I like how success has made you a nicer person, Well,
I mean, it's just filled in some gaps. You spend a long time trying to do something. And, when I was looking down the fucking, barrel pointing towards me of, what was my life going to be like? After that divorce, when I was broke and I almost sold my house, I started doing the podcast. What are my options? And I have an equal amount of terror to respect for unknown comics who are out there just, dragging their bags around doing the work. I didn't want to be one. It was terrifying to me that, that would be the only way, because there's no plan B after a certain point.
What, just being a comedian on the road all the time, and that's your life?
With no credits.
Yeah.
With no real credit. With no way to necessarily, be a draw enough to earn a living off of your name, off of your work in a way. To just be like a gun for hire.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to me.
It is terrifying. And then you're at the mercy of the clubs. You're not selling out. I know it very well. And, you gotta, it's almost, you don't have any bargaining power if you're not putting asses in the seats.
Right.
They can pay you whatever they want to pay you. And you go back to clubs every year, and the owner of the club's got like new Mercedes every year. He's putting his kids through college, and you're arguing with the guy about getting cab fare.
Fucking, I'm sorry you're going through that.
It's not everywhere, but
Good. But it all happened because it was not part of my plan, dude. Like the reason that I'm a nicer guy, and I think I was always a nice guy, but I was mad and I was insecure and I didn't know how to function. I didn't know how to be a grown up. I didn't know how to handle business matters. I was an inconsistent comic. I didn't build relationships with comedy clubs. I did nothing right. I expected everything and I did nothing to finesse it. I had no idea that show business was a business. I thought, I would arrive when I was supposed to, Yeah. And I was angry and I'd done the work and and other people did it. I never had much respect or much capacity for schmoozing with agents or assistants who become agents or handling club owners properly. I didn't think of it. I was self-involved and in retrospect, was it a mistake? I don't know. So the fact that because my podcast and the way I talk to other people and the way I talk about myself in this format, that just happens to be, the way I earn my living a good part of the time, a good part of my living with, that evolved, that I'm glad that people get something out of it and they get something out of it that's deep and it helps their life and they have a relationship with me. And, I learn a lot when I talk to other people and people learn a lot about other people, and that over time, me and my partner, who he was not a business person either. Neither one of us were business people. We have been able to, build a business out of this where there was no business to be built 5 years ago.
Right.
And, so there's a lot of pride in a lot of things that, now my stand-up's better than it's ever been because I'm more myself. I'm not afraid anymore. People come to see me because they like what I do. And again, the beautiful thing about being a real stand-up is that if people don't know me, if I go work clubs, which I'm going to do next month, I can do that job.
Yeah.
I know how to do that. And, I'm looking forward to that challenge. But the biggest thrill out of my life, being a guy that doesn't have a wife, that doesn't have children, that doesn't really know how to have a good time all the time, is that, my business partner, Brendan, who has been working with me since Air America, since he was like 24.
Wow.
He was an associate producer on a show, and that's where I met him. So he's been sort of producing me for, 12 years. Yeah, one way or the other. He's full-time on with WTF, and we built this little business. He's got a little baby, just bought his first house. It just, it fills me with pride and excitement.
And it's all off of WTF.
Pretty much.
Working for you. He doesn't have any other job.
He does some consulting, and he does things here and there, but no, it's our business.
Wow.
We are, partners right down the middle. And, he's built this beautiful life for himself where he can make his own choices and do his own thing. I'm happy that I have that for myself because it's a beautiful thing. But, it really makes me excited and proud for him to be, to be part of that. Because when he said, I'm going to come on full time, I'm like, whoa. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Look, I've lived with this fucking unpredictability my whole life, but you're not cut out for this shit.
Right.
But he was like, he's very bright and he'd crunch the numbers. He's like, no, I think I'll be all right. I think I'm gonna be all right. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna worry about it.
Bravo. I also like that you can sell out you doing the Steve Allen Theater, working on new material. You workshopping ideas.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure
that's
they
almost
know.
like Muhammad Ali selling tickets to people
Where
watching
he's training.
Where he's training.
in Pennsylvania.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How many people can do that? Oh yeah, I'm going to watch a guy practice.
Right, but I also like I make it clear what's going to happen, and I don't take any of the money home. You know, I give it to the theater so they can stay open. I try.
And
to
what
pay
is
my-
that? It's like an atheist think tank. I don't
know what it is. Right now, it's like
There's always free copies of Ayn Rand's Fountainhead.
I don't know what
By
the deal.
door,
I
and
just
then
know
they've got Copernicus and
Yeah.
all these.
the Center for Inquiry, the Center Steve Allen Center for Inquiry.
Yeah.
I don't know what any of that is. I work with Amit, who is in residence there as the Tripany House Theater. You know, he does comedy shows and whatnot. So I work with him. I don't have anything to do with the theater. I just like the space. It's got a parking lot, seats the right amount of people. It's easy access. It's a fucking $8 ticket. And, you know, I just, you know, I'm hard on myself about it. I don't feel great about some of the shows I do there, but I know that's the way I'm working now. So
I've done the midnight show or the tomorrow show, whatever that thing is called, but I've always found that facility very interesting. So
it's great. He'd love to have you.
Oh, great.
Seriously.
Cool.
I told Bill Burr about it. He does it sometimes too. If you just want to go crank out on a cheap ticket, you know, you're not. It's like it can only seat so many.
Right.
So like,
Well, I love the little theater space, but
Yeah.
I always thought it's interesting. What exactly is that place? There's like 100 copies of Ayn Rand's Fountainhead by
I don't
the
know what
door.
it is. I think it, yeah, it was.
What are they trying to convey? It's I call it like an atheist think tank, but I don't know.
Well, I think it's more skeptical. It's skeptics. It's like, you know, rationalists and, you know, whatnot. I'm not sure I am.
You want some more coffee? Okay.
I'm good, man. I've had a lot of coffee.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, you've had all of your musical heroes on
Yeah,
there.
few, yeah.
What did you learn after finally getting to touch lightning?
Oh, yeah. You know what I learned?
Iggy Pop.
I always learn the same fucking thing.
What's that?
They're just people, dude.
Right. You see Iggy Pop, he's got mismatched socks, he's got like a bug hanging.
No, I don't know if he had mismatched socks, but he didn't have a shirt on. He took his shirt off when he out on the deck. He's just like, he starts doing a weird dance on my deck, and there's a few people around. He takes his shirt off, and we went in and talked. What I learned ultimately always is that, you know, most of these people that, you know, I talk to have public personalities. Some of them I'm very fond of, and they have a certain mythic status in my mind, and they have a lot of impact on my life through their music or just through who I think they are or what they are. And they always end up being so much more in the sense that, you know, you can't really know anybody if you just worship them or just only know their work. Like they become people. And you realize again that these are people, they're artists, they have a job, you know, usually to do what they do. Most of them see it as a job and have to find ways to continue creating and doing it the way they want to do it, either because they have to make money or they just, you know, have to do it. And that they're all sort of like much more interesting and much more nuanced people than, you know, just engaging with their public offerings is going to allow you to see. So I have the same experience that anybody who listens to my podcast has when they hear these guys. It's just sort of like, I had no idea that Iggy Pop would have such a good memory and be so sophisticated and intellectual, and have like these, you know, very sort of kind of informed points of view about things and carried himself. And Henry Rollins had told me that there's a difference between, you know, Jim Osterberg, is that his name, I think, and Iggy Pop. You know, that there's, you know, these, you know, that Iggy Pop is, you know, this is the persona. This is not Jim. You know, when you talk to Jim, it's very different. How you doing? What's going on? I saw this beautiful film the other day. But then you got Iggy. So, you know, you kind of learn that thing. And then people like Tom York, who I'm very impressed with as an artist. You know, like I thought he would be very difficult and aloof and weird, but like, I don't know, you know, I talked to him and we talked about politics up front for about 5 minutes, and he was a very sweet guy and very generous and, you know, and kind of sensitive and nice guy. I thought that would be difficult. Keith was like, I knew from reading Keith Richards' autobiography that I was already surprised because
It's right next to your head.
I read it like it was the Bible.
Yeah, I did too.
And but I was like, when I read that, I'm like, holy shit, there's a lot more to this guy than I ever imagined. And so when I talked to him, he was, I was still, it was a very fanned out interview, and it was just very exciting for me to be with him. And he was a little loopy, and it was a good time. I'm glad I made him laugh, and it was really like I don't know if sometimes I don't even process the emotions of these things for months, maybe years later, that I sat with him for an hour and had that thing happen. And but it was amazing to me. But he's an old man, and he seems a little fragile when you put your arm around him and touch him, and he's okay, but he's just he's a guy, and he's had to be Keith Richards for all of it, and I think some parts of that are, he's had enough of it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he really, I think, after a certain point, I don't think he's done hard drugs like heroin in, over 2 decades.
Yeah, my favorite factoid about Keith is he has a massive book collection, and he collects rare, really ancient books.
He's a very sophisticated guy. He's a very deep thinker, and, he's a very, educated guy. And, it's just like, he's been, the quintessential junkie forever. And I really think that my feeling was that he sort of wants to be, distance himself from that. I don't think he gives a shit, but he doesn't want to talk about it. Like, that part of his life is long gone. I mean, he might do a toot here and there, smoke some weed, and kind of maintains the vodka, but he ain't no fucking dope fiend anymore. That got bad for him. And I don't think people really take that into consideration, that, him living through that, being strung out, was bad. It was as bad as it was for anybody who gets strung out and survives it. And I think it's a long time ago for him. But it's not for most people.
And not many people survive heroin.
No. And not many people kick it either. But most of the ones that do kick it, Burroughs and people I know, they kind of figure out some other thing. Just a little booze, kind of ride it out, a little weed.
Well, I thought you did great with that, especially covering the different parts of his career and the open G tuning, which I learned from the book, reading that no one could ever figure out that Stone sound.
Yeah,
that really
he took it from Ry Cooder.
Wow.
Yeah. No, there were some interesting things, and like the end on the grandpa stuff was sweet. He's like but that's always, I can't even put my finger on it because it's happening more now. What I'm seeing or what I'm feeling is that there's a tremendous relief, in really knowing that, it's like Bob Dylan, even the president of the United States has to, sometimes has to stand naked. So like, you talk to, like, I talked to Neil Young recently. I talked to David Crosby recently, and I haven't put them up yet, but these guys are, they have their own struggles. They have, with age, and with relevance, and with how they talk to people, and what they're doing now. I mean, it doesn't change. They just happen to be geniuses, or they happen to have seized their moment in history and held it for a long time. But they are just people that go up and do the job that we do. You get up on stage, or you get in a studio, you write a song, and you honor yourself. But that doesn't forego every other human thing. You still got to shit and go to the dentist, and deal with livers and, hearts and, and kids and, so that whole part of it, which is essentially a lot of what my podcast does sometimes, is it's very beautiful to me and very humbling to me that, these incredibly gifted guys, that everybody sees as separate than them, or something they can shit on or judge as if they're not people, are really just people. I know that seems trite, but if you really think about these guys that you hold in reverence, you may think you think they're people, but they are exactly what you want to think they are, and how they've affected you. And then when you see the other side of that, it adds a whole other depth to it, where you realize that, this is a human dude that, has this gift that works hard and has made this amazing thing. And sometimes you don't want to know that. Sometimes you don't, there's a risk to it.
Well, we mythologize people.
Well, yeah, because you love their work.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you don't want to know that someone's a dick.
Yeah.
Or that, they're just that guy. Sometimes you want to keep them there, Like, like I tweeted something yesterday about Bowie.
Oh, I saw it. That it feels.
Somehow I'm listening to Bowie. It feels like it's from. It feels different. It feels like it's from another world. And I said, I guess it doesn't feel that different. Like.
Now that he's dead, it seems like he's.
Yeah, but it always felt otherworldly.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that guy.
Yeah.
Who knew that guy? Like, it turns out that he was much more in control of his game than I think. And then when you really think about it, like these evolutions, these amazing, courageous, fucking, creative adventures into these other things, it's like to orchestrate those things. You got to work hard. All these guys that you know and love, they work hard. I sound like Kevin Hart. But that's the amazing thing.
What about Kevin Hart?
He's all about the work.
Oh, yeah.
But all of them, they're not loafing. The guys that that have a place in your heart and your mind because their work is so fucking amazing, they worked. It wasn't just sort of like, it just happened.
Right. One artist or person that you got a lot out of, like you talk about, your idea of someone and mythologizing someone. I'd say one of my favorite interviews that you've done for the podcast, or was it for the podcast? Maybe it was for some festival that you did a live interview with Terry Gross.
Oh yeah.
And me being the left-wing liberal of my right-wing conservative family and just being on the road years ago and just driving around America listening to NPR and like she wasn't a human. She was like this symbol of my political stance in life and
the highbrow, sophisticated,
my oracle,
intelligent.
Yeah, my oracle of highbrow intelligence.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you did this interview with her. I don't know if it was for your podcast or...
We both ran it. She ran it and I ran it.
And she's on stage. I've never heard her be interviewed or I didn't know much about her life.
No one did.
And she's a fan of yours. She watches the show Maron. And like, you've got her giggling and then belly laughing. And then you brought out all these wonderful things from her life. And the story, she's like a young girl... before college, or she dropped out of college, and she hitchhiked across America with her boyfriend to go to San Francisco, and like they did acid or something. And I'm listening to this, and I'm like, you made her human. Where to me, she was just
a voice.
She was this voice of
a lofty voice,
right?
Yeah.
And like, and now I have these because of that interview, she was a person with a life and experiences and disappointments and parents who thought she should have done something else or whatever, that I think is my favorite interview that you did.
That was a highlight of my life that night because I felt the same way about her, and there was some sort of festival, radio something festival, and she requested me. I think it was hinging on whether I would do it or not, whether she did it. So she wanted me to interview her, And I'd done Fresh Air at that point once before, years ago. And I'd never really met her. I never met her. But she, it was like, Terry wants you to do this. And I'm like, well, I will do it for Terry. And it was one of those moments where everything that I'd ever learned about anything, comedy, being on stage, interviewing, being a good person, everything coalesced on that night. Because I realized, I gotta honor her, and she's what wants me to do it. She respects me, I respect her. But there isn't a lot out there about her. She's not a public person.
Right.
Really at all. There's some information, so I had to look at that information. It's the same information. It's not much. She was here, she was here, she was here, she was born here. So I had to take in that information and decide where she lived in, what were the portals in this limited amount of information into her as a person. So I had to work that out as an interviewer. I had where are the areas in her life where we're going to find her. So I did that, in my head. And, we go out there, and she's not a performer. She's not a stage person.
Yeah.
So, we're out there, and she's there, little Terry. She's sitting there. And I know that I've got to respect her and carry this thing and protect her. Because we're on a big stage. There's almost 2,000 people there. And I have everything about me as a stand-up comic. So I know that I want to get laughs. But I also know that I don't want to upstage her. This is her night. I'm going to be gracious and do this right. This is about her. It's not about me. So we did that. And there were moments where we were moving through it where I could sense she was uncomfortable and I'd maybe do a little joke or I wouldn't pursue a certain thing but there were moments where she's like, I'm not going to talk about that. She's savvy, but we were on stage in front of a big audience and I wanted it to be entertaining. But there were definitely moments where I'm like, joke would come in and I'd be like, it's not the time. It's not about you. And I'd fucking stifle it. And I just wanted her to have a great night and I wanted her to feel good about it. And I wanted to, everyone to learn some stuff and have it. It was beautiful. Beautiful. It was beautiful because it was a live event and it worked out like that.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And then, you made her a person. I learned so much about her. I didn't know her husband is a jazz critic.
Yeah.
And so she said that, her apartment or her home where she lives is just stacks of books and albums. And, that's the way I want to picture Terry Gross's house. My apartment.
Yeah.
That it's just constant art and books and music being, crunched into this factory brain that's going to pop out into an everlasting gobstopper.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love her, and and I love that experience, and she's interviewed me a couple of times since then. We gave her the first post-Obama interview, and really the only one. Her and Chris Hayes, and we tightly managed that situation. And also, I just did it for the new season of Marin. And anytime I get on the phone with her, which is only during the interviews on her show, I've emailed with her here and there. It's not like we're talking every week or anything. But when I get interviewed by her, I'm still sort of nervous. And, I hear her pushing. And I know where she, and I'll give it to her. I get, we get each other. There's a weird thing that happens now. Because I'm always wary to call myself an interviewer. I think I'm a conversationalist, but I don't know that I rarely call myself an interviewer. But even when I did Charlie Rose recently, we ended up talking for 5 minutes to each other about interviewing. We're sort of like, oh, you do that? Yeah, here's what I do. One of those kind of conversations.
What was that? About preparation or?
Well, yeah, it was just about,
questions to lure them in with a nice personal thing before you hit them with the...
No, but just sort of I don't remember exactly. You have to watch it. But, I remember there was a good chunk there where we were sort of kind of going off each other as interviewers, And, I felt appreciated and respected as because I guess it is what I do now. One of the things I do, and that I'm respected for. That I never thought that would be.
Yeah, and it's funny that you don't see that as part of your persona, and that so many people you're famous for.
I know
for talking.
Well, it's because I go into the garage anytime anyone comes over. I'm not I'm nervous because I think it's they're like first dates almost. It's sort of I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know this guy. He's coming over to my house. We're going to go out there, and I don't know what's going to happen. I hope it goes good. I hope we have a nice conversation. I'm very rarely gunning for anything, and I'm always pretty respectful. I'm not out to sandbag anybody or talk about anything that people are uncomfortable about, or necessarily even put them on the spot. It's just not what I'm doing. I'm not a journalist, and I'm not looking for, for garbage on people. So like, I just want to have a nice conversation. And when I do, it's always amazing. You know, it's almost always very fulfilling to me. You know, just the conversation itself. That's because that's how I look at them. I know I do this podcast, but I don't listen to it. You know, Brendan, I send the conversation to Brendan. He edits it and puts it up. And like my experience is, you know, talking to the person. You know, so like, it's just like, who's coming over? And I'm like, oh, fuck, how am I going to talk to that guy? What's going to happen in there? I don't fucking know. I never know. I don't have any, you know, I'm like, sometimes my producer has to remind me. It's like, dude, you're good at this. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And he's like, or just don't worry about it.
Have you had people like you weren't prepared for and you thought, oh shit, what am I going to talk to this guy for an hour about? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because
the only real disaster I ever remember from your podcast. Oh my God, I'm so glad I thought of this. You know, when my father died, and I called you and I told you this, my father died in November 2009, and there was that period of like 6 months or a year afterwards, and I was so fucked up and distraught. Your podcast helped me so much to get through that pain.
Oh, good.
And it was the first year of your podcast.
Yeah.
To hear you talking comedy with comedians took my brain out of sorrow and grief.
Oh, good.
It wasn't depression.
Right.
It was grief and heartbreak.
Yeah.
And I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh.
And I mean, and I called you and I told you, I said, hey, bro, you know, you really was nice salve on my fucking broken heart.
Good.
But the only disaster I remember you ever having was Gallagher walking off.
Yeah. There's been a couple of
I've never heard any other ones that you weren't victorious on pulling something out of somebody.
You know, it's like that was really early on, and I didn't even have to post that, but I did because I thought, like, well, I don't know who fucked up here, but like, you know, I don't even see that as a disaster. It became sort of infamous, but it was sort of funny.
Hilarious.
Oh, come on, Gallagher.
Yeah.
But sometimes what happens is that, like, either people don't know what to expect, and, like, because I don't have a list of questions, you know, if things aren't going well, I don't have that great a fallback plan. Like, especially with people with huge careers where I just sort of put bullet points and things I want to cover and hope, like, launch a conversation. But I've learned over time that, you know, sometimes, you know, people a lot of times don't really kind of, like, relax into themselves for, you know, half hour. You know, 40 minutes sometimes. It's not saying that first half hour and 40 minutes isn't good, but there's a break. There's a break to it where, you know, we've gotten past formalities. We've talked about things in a surface way, and then, you know, maybe they just relax. And I notice it. I don't know if listeners can notice it specifically, but I feel it. And when I feel things, I've learned to let it be, you know, and don't talk through it. If something needs to sit for a second, let it sit. And also sometimes, like, I've got to wait. Like, I've got to keep throwing things out until something sparks somebody. You know, a lot of times with people, they're like, well, okay, what do you got? And I'm like, oh, no, that's not that kind of interview. But now I'm in this situation. So I'll just start with stuff and wait. And hopefully some point, like, they'll just all of a sudden have feelings about something. Like, I went to a thing and I'm like, oh, God, thank God, here we go. So, you know what I mean? Where it doesn't become just the other side of me asking, where they're sort of like, all of a sudden they're engaged. And sometimes that takes longer than others.
Okay, I don't want to relive your Charlie Rose moment of talking about interviewing each other, but one thing I've found, some people I've talked to on my podcast, I'll prepare 20 questions, and then, like, they're giving me nothing, and then I've burnt through the questions in the first half hour. Right. And I've got at least another half hour to try and fill.
Yeah.
And then there's other people, you ask them 2 questions, and they talk for an hour and a half.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
There's that phenomenon.
Yeah, that's why I don't do questions. Never write questions down, ever. I have areas that I think would be good to talk in, you know, but I never, like any of my notes, I never phrase questions. And I do that with my act too. It's always these bullet points, like, you know, just refreshing things. So what happens for me, instead of like, I have a question written out, like they'll come out in questions, but I'll just be like, yo, Beggar's Banquet. I mean, that thing, like, I don't even know exactly if there's a full question in things, but I'm just hoping that, you know, I'll just like, and then they'll do something. You know, like I never, you know, and I forget a lot of stuff. There's certain people, it's all based on my curiosity, you know, like I didn't know, you know, you talk to somebody like, you know, Anderson, you know, Paul Thomas, is that it? Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson, the director. You know, right? Yeah, There Will Be Blood.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and, you know, all the other ones. Magnolia, The Master. Like, you know, these very challenging but very intentional movies. You know, like I'd always thought he was this dark, mysterious character, but he's not. He's a kid. He grew up in the Valley. His father was this weird, you know, Cleveland or Ohio-based TV personality who was best friends with Tim Conway. And this is the guy that made There Will Be Blood. And,
Tin Machine, baby.
huh? What's Tin Machine?
Wasn't it Tim Con? No. Soupy Sales' kids. They were in Tin
that's
Machine
right.
with
That's
Bowie.
Soupy Sales.
Yeah, sorry.
I interviewed Hunt Sales.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Hunt Sales.
Those were good records.
He's a tough Jew, man.
Yeah.
Hunt is. Tough old junkie Jew, that guy. I interviewed him in Austin. That's good. I liked it. But like, so with Paul, I was like, all right, you know, I got to watch your movies twice because I don't know what the fuck you mean or what you're trying to do. So let's go through them. You know, and I did it that way because I love him, but he's a challenging artist. So I challenged him. And it went very well. He was very fun and funny about it. So I just don't do, like, I've struggled in interviews. And, you know, sometimes I don't talk about the struggle that much anymore because, like, anyone's experience is going to be what it is, you know. Harry Dean Stanton was difficult, you know, and that was a lesson. Like, I see it all as lessons. A lot of times you just keep talking. And they're there. They showed up. Most of them know what they're getting into.
Why was Harry Dean Stanton difficult?
Because I went to his house.
You opened with the home invasion where he was tied up and left in the garage?
I don't know nothing about that.
Yeah, it was like in the 90s. There was a home invasion and people like...
He's an old man. You know, been through a lot. Likes to sit and smoke. Well, like I saw this documentary about him, and, you know, I love Harry Dean, and I saw this documentary about him, and you know, that took years to make. And he barely talked in that. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking.
He loves to sing. He likes all those old...
Yeah, but like I got him on a morning. I went to his house. He didn't know who I was or why I was there, really. It was set up. He's doing his crossword, smoking. And, you know, he didn't give a shit. And he's not a conversationalist. Not with me. I'm sure he is with his friends. But it was hard. And, I didn't find it to be great. And I ended up buffering it with the woman who directed the actual documentary and released them together. Just because I couldn't get through 40 minutes with him. And
couldn't get nothing out of him.
Well, I mean, I got things, but a lot of people are like, "What did you expect? He's in his 80s." It reminds me of my grandfather. What do you want out of him? And I'm like, that's a good point. What did I want?
But I like that you're always like trying to pull out of people their motivations and you know, the what fuels them in life, you know?
Yeah. Well, I hope I find that. Like, I'm not always really that clear, Tom, to be honest with you, what I want. It's usually something emotional. I've gotten, you know, there are habits I have that I find helpful to me about people, you know, where they grew up, what they come from, what they do in high school, who were they in high school. There are things that interest me because I want to see them as a person. I want to see them as a kid. I want to know what, you know, because then I can relate to them by feeling my own childhood and whatnot. Like, I find that what I still am trying to do is connect with people more than get information from them. That seems to be more important.
Yeah. I also like that you in latter years, you've talked a lot about growing up in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Which years ago, I could never understand that. Because like in San Francisco, I was like, I'm from Florida. And like I was making fun of weird shit about Florida and, you know, my family and shit. And you never talked about New Mexico. And I always thought that was interesting.
Well, I mean, I don't know what they, you know, like everyone has sort of a point of reference for Florida.
Yeah, but yeah, true.
But, and you know, New Mexico, it's sort of like, I mean, I didn't, you know, without trivializing it or doing something stereotypical or hackneyed about what people think New Mexico is. I mean, no one has any point of reference for New Mexico. I mean, Florida's a fucking clusterfuck of a shit.
Right, endless things to talk about.
Yeah.
But I know you got a trunk full of cowboy poetry somewhere.
No. No, I mean, I grew up in a middle-sized.
You're going to retire
American
being
city.
a part of the Hot Air Balloon Festival?
Well, I definitely saw that every year. I definitely, learned a lot of stuff, but I don't know if it was specifically New Mexico. Certainly the landscape and the fact that when I was growing up, it was, 60 or 70%, Chicano. But I never really noticed it that much. It's weird with me and that kind of stuff. I'm actually, sort of self-involved and insecure enough to just assume that, almost everybody has their shit together more than me. With people who register ethnicities or anything, I never experienced like any sort of contempt or judgment other than like, they seem to have a pretty tight community. they all seem to get along. Where's my community? Well,
and I like now in the last year, almost every guest that you have goes, so this is the chair that Obama sat in?
I know.
Everybody says that. So.
It's weird. I don't even think that way. It's weird. It's a weird thing. Like that. I like that people think that way, and I appreciate it, but my experience was, I think that the fact that I had done political talk radio and that I talked to politicians before, and that like my experience with politics was a little disillusioning, and my education about how politics works, ultimately led me to leave that job to somebody else talking about it, was that like I was a little jaded. So like, though I have a tremendous respect for the presidency and this president in particular, and I was definitely honored to have the experience, I knew that he was a politician, and I know that they're going to have the conversation they want to have. They're going to answer the questions they want to answer. And if they don't want to answer a question that you ask them, they'll answer another one. They'll backload it into their answer. So I knew that stuff.
Yeah.
And I also knew that was not what I do anymore. So I just wanted to honor myself and honor him and try to have a kind of like personal conversation. I wanted to connect with him. And I think we did all right.
I was proud of you, man. I was listening to it, and like, I'm sure you were amped, and like, I thought you did great. I'm as your friend listening to it. I'm like, I'm silently cheering for you, like, oh, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up. And I thought I was so proud of you, man. You killed it, and it was such an important part moment in American history, because it was just days after that Charleston, South Carolina shooting, which I'll tell you. I don't know how that affected you. Yeah. Nothing has shaken me to my core since September 11th, since that Charleston shooting. Because, like, the racism and the hatred and the fact that kid sat there with those people and prayed with them, or was with them for an hour before he started shooting, and that less than 24 hours later, 48 hours later, these people, the family members, could stand in a court and forgive that uneducated, jobless swamp turd and say, I forgive you, made me realize I'm a failure at my own religion. Because there's all kinds of shit I can't forgive.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really powerful moment in American history. And then to hear the president open up all about it, and you and him had this lengthy discussion about it, gun control. Yeah. And the one thing I was miffed at him over was that nothing was changed after the Sandy Hook shooting. Yeah. And then and I learned from him being on your podcast that he was pissed off about that too. Yeah. That he couldn't change anything about
that. The fucking NRA's got a hold on the bulk of Congress. Yeah. The financial gun to their head.
Yeah, I thought that was you want more coffee?
No, I'm good.
I thought that was
yeah, it was intense, man, because we didn't know if he was even going to come after that, and we knew we had to talk about it, and like that was a very structured day, and Brendan came out and he produced that Hands On with me, and we're tight on that one, he's got a long experience in dealing with politics and understanding. Him and I are kind of one brain about a lot of stuff, but his brain is bigger and better than mine. So we handled that whole situation pretty well. And I just wanted to make sure that I kind of, did what I do and that, but Obama's very disarming. It was very, right away, it was sort of like, he's if he's not really an authentic dude, he's got me fooled, you know, because he was. And I think he's an honest, earnest dude, and he's decent, he's moral and he's smart. And it was just, and I knew I was comfortable because within a few minutes I was calling him man and finishing his sentences for him. I guess I'm okay. It's the president, and I'm like waiting for him to say something. I'll throw something in there. He's like, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay, good. That I was, he made me comfortable enough where I could be myself in that situation.
And I thought you made him comfortable, and he opened up beautifully on that and talked honestly at length about so many things. And then it kind of pissed me off. Like the next day, all these people made this big deal out of the fact that he used the N-word. I'm like, no, that's not. That wasn't the main thing. That wasn't what happened there yesterday. What happened was this guy's talking about this horrific shooting and gun laws in America.
Yeah, no, it was like they ran with that, and Brendan sort of knew it. I didn't think it would it did what it did, but we managed it pretty well. I didn't do any interviews around that. There were people waiting in my driveway, news crews just showing up. Hey, Mark, I'm like, no.
Oh, to talk to you afterwards. Oh, really? Yeah. Wow. What's that like to have to be a paparazzi?
It wasn't paparazzi. They wanted comment. They wanted to go to the source, and they wanted to talk about the N-word and this and that. And I talked to Brendan. We're like, we're not doing no interviews about that. And we did a couple of interviews. We had Chris Hayes, we had Terry Gross. Maybe I did one other one on the contingent that they would talk about the entire interview. I'm not. What do you want my comment for? Listen to the podcast. I'm just not. You guys are going to do with it what you want. That's not me.
I thought you knocked it out of the park.
Thanks, buddy.
Man. I thought you killed it. And now here we are, almost 1 year later since that shooting, and that shooting in my hometown in Orlando, the gay bar. So it's like, it's for hate-filled people to take AR-15s and go slaughter other people. Absolutely nothing has changed in this country.
It's embarrassing. It's a disgrace. It's terrifying. It's just like, I don't like, look, I've shot a gun before. I grew up in New Mexico. They were around. But the fact that there's the way that the NRA and the messaging around guns and the right has made it seem conspiratorial to regulate in any way firearms is insane. It's insane. Any fucking idiot can buy a gun like that.
Yeah.
Jimmy Tingle had the greatest joke on background checks. I was just thinking about it yesterday. Like why people are against him. Like it's like, yeah, man, I need to buy that gun. And the gun shop guy goes, well, it's going to take 3 days. We got to do a background check. The guy's going to be gone by now. By then. What kind of gun? Like, let's say it's for home protection and hunting. How many? You got a pistol, an automatic pistol, got 9 in the clip to protect your home. You need more than that? I don't think so. But some of these guys think they're going to be protecting themselves against an army.
Right.
And it's like, I think that's a fundamental lack of faith in our country.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you want to live that life, but that doesn't mean everyone needs to live that life. Or why do we got to trust your perception of things? You troubled motherfucker.
Yeah. And the Constitution says a well-regulated militia. It doesn't say any asshole doing whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah, well they can misinterpret it however they want, but like even the president said, we're not taking your guns away.
Yeah.
Just this kind is not necessary. And if you're going to own this kind, you better have a real reason And we're going to have to do some checks on you. And they, they're not great at that either. I just don't, from my understanding of it, any fucking idiot really can own a gun and buy it legally. That's a little crazy. I have to fucking get a driver's license to drive a car. I'm not the first one making this point. I think Obama made that point. Maybe we should do a little investigation.
Yeah.
A little investigating.
Yeah.
But no one's deterring anyone's ability to bear arms. And militias aside, whatever that means, you got to play along with the country you live in. And, the information out there that's available to everybody to misconstrue or believe, even if it's bullshit, is ample at this juncture in history because of the internet. But the bottom line is that the president of the United States is everybody's president for the term that he's president. That's not my president. He's the president. This is the way democracy works. Write it out, shut the fuck up, grow up, and do something different. Just because you don't like the president doesn't mean there's going to be martial law in 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the escalation of paranoia and fear as certain people's lives change because the culture around them is evolving. Doesn't mean we all have to pay the price for their insanity and their idea of what's supposed to happen for this country. If it's supposed to happen, then let it happen through the channels that it's supposed to happen, not by you being an aggravated fucking monster. Now, obviously, this shooting that happened the other day, there's a whole other issue involved. But it still comes down to the fact that that guy was an American. However he was misguided or fucking crazy, whether it's religion or, it seems to be terrorism of his own making. Ideologically, he decided that he's going to do this in the name of his God. That's been done in the name of the other God, too. Here. The Jesus.
Yeah.
So I understand that, there are problems with terrorism. But the point is, this guy was an American citizen who fucking lost his mind and had the arms to execute his fucking dumb motherfucking evil fantasy. And it shouldn't be that easy.
Orlando is where I grew up. And now the worst mass shooting in American history happened there. And then, as bad as that was, and then the next day, all of these people commenting on Facebook, it made it even worse. Like all these idiots turning it political, like they do everything in this country. And, I'm going to get guns before they're taken away. And like, guns would have stopped that guy. Like, right. I'm going to a gay club to dance and do some ecstasy. Let me put a gun in my boot.
Well, yeah, they have to design some nice bags. Some nicer holsters. Yeah, I don't understand it. I've lived my whole life without a gun. I just think that there's a big difference in what people do with their fear and their perception of what's going to happen and what's really happening. I don't know. There's a huge disconnect. And that when people gain in numbers about what's happening, I mean, the idea that even if the shit goes down, however horrible it's going to be, where these guys are going to have to defend their homes and their communities from the actual military, it's not going to go well. You might want to give that fight up now. You're going to be outgunned. And God forbid that happens. Or, I can't even picture a universe like that. It's just, I feel like we have an opportunity here to be an advanced country. And I think we are in a lot of ways. But I find it to be, frankly, embarrassing that, certain conversations about class and about socialism and about, actual, tolerance, that we just can't manage it. We can't manage it. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know. I don't think I know or understand a lot of the Americans that are that entrenched in fear and hate. If I know them, I don't know them like that. It's sad, and I don't have any solutions. But I know killing people isn't one of them.
Right. I mean, and it's just such a common phenomenon of innocent people being slaughtered execution style by massive military grade bullets, and we just keep rolling with it, and nobody gets upset about it. Hopefully this time,
I guess people get upset, but they feel powerless. But Let's end on a high note, buddy.
Okay, my brother. Is there any words of wisdom or advice that you have? See, we were talking now. The helicopters are. That's the black ops are closing in.
Yeah,
the FBI.
Obama just wants to make sure we're on the right side of this. He keeps an eye on me. That thing's been following me around for almost a year.
Is there any words of wisdom or advice that you have for the people of the earth?
Sure.
And you've clearly laid it out in every recording. And
I don't know. Just, try to be true to yourself. Try not to get too cynical. Try to be as decent as possible. And, if things don't work out the way you want them to work out, try to accept what is. And good luck with everything.
It's good advice, man.
Is it?
Yeah. It's good enough. All right. I love you, Mark Maron.
Love you too, buddy. Thanks.
Long may you run, brother.
You too.
Long may you run.
Pigtail on. Say somebody crossed you, now your mind is gone. If it hurts you too bad, call for help. Don't be ashamed to call the doctor when there ain't nobody left. Tell you that. To blame, just say it. Tell me whose little who do you think y'all? Tell me who little what you're trying to be a star. Say somebody stole a strand of your hair. You know it's missing, but you don't know where. If you feel somebody's trying to rip off your mind, if you feel in yourself that you're so inclined, go ahead and cut it out. Down the street with a rag on the head, shout.